Hello and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something that literally surrounds us every single day, even if we rarely stop to actually look at it. I'm talking about Philippine social legislation. You can think of it like this massive, unseen safety net. It's intricately woven by the law, and it's designed specifically to catch you when life, well, inevitably happens. Whether we're talking about retirement, sudden illness, getting hurt on the job, or even modern challenges to our well-being, this legal framework is what stands between a worker and absolute vulnerability.
So let's look at our roadmap for today. We'll be covering the SSS for the private sector, GSIS for government workers, how to combine those contributions through portability, the ECP for disability and death, the Magna Carta for seafarers, and finally, mental health at work.
Let's jump right in. Section 1, SSS, the private safety net.
We're starting off with Republic Act number 1199. This is the foundation of private employment protection, the Social Security System, or SSS. And notice just how incredibly broad this net is. The law mandates compulsory coverage, not just for your typical corporate employees, but for domestic workers, our kasambahays, self-employed professionals, and overseas Filipino workers. But it doesn't even stop there. Say you're a separated member, a permanent migrant, or a non-working spouse who dedicates all their time to managing the household, the SSS actually has a voluntary mechanism to cover you too. The whole idea is to leave as few people behind as possible.
Now, if there's one thing to remember here, it's this magic number, 36. Sure, SSS offers short-term cash allowances for sickness or maternity, but the really big-ticket items, those are the monthly pensions for retirement, disability, or death. And to unlock those, the law generally says you need a minimum of 36 monthly contributions prior to whatever contingency happens. It's basically the threshold you have to cross to secure that long-term peace of mind.
Moving right along to Section 2, GSIS, shielding government workers.
Okay, so let's flip over to the public sector. Republic Act number 8291 builds a totally different kind of shield through the GSIS. Now, coverage here is compulsory for government employees under the retirement age of 65. But what's really fascinating are the exclusions. Our uniformed personnel, the armed forces, the PNP, they're actually excluded because they rely on their own separate systems. It also excludes contractual workers without a formal employee-employee relationship. Oh, and here's a really unique twist. Members of the Judiciary and Constitutional Commissions, they are covered for life insurance only.
This brings us to a tricky little statutory quirk you absolutely need to know. Both SSS and GSIS protect your dependents, right? Your spouse and your kids. But they actually define a dependent child differently. Under SSS, your unmarried kids are covered until they turn 21. But under the GSIS law, that dependent status cuts off earlier, at age 18. It's a subtle distinction, but man, it drastically alters who legally gets the benefits when it counts.
All right, Section 3, portability, combining contributions.
So, you might be thinking, what happens if I switch career paths midlife? It's a super common scenario. Imagine you spent 8 years at a private marketing firm paying into SSS, and then you take a job at a government agency and start paying into GSIS. What happens to those private sector contributions? Do they just vanish into thin air? Thankfully, no. Enter Republic Act number 7699, the Limited Portability Scheme. It uses this concept called totalization. Basically, it lets you merge your years of service from both sectors so you can qualify for retirement. But, and this is a huge but, it only applies if you don't already qualify in either system alone. If you've already hit the 10 years needed for SSS or the 15 for GSIS, this portability law does not apply. You can't just merge the years to try and get a bigger payout. It's strictly a safety mechanism to make sure you don't end up with absolutely nothing just because you jumped between sectors. If you do use it, both systems just pay you proportionally based on what you actually put in.
That brings us to Section 4, ECP, disability and death.
Let's talk about what happens when you actually get hurt on the job. Under the Labor Code, we have the Employees Compensation Program, or ECP. To get these benefits, you have to satisfy the work connection doctrine, meaning you have to prove your injury arose out of your employment, or that your illness is an officially recognized occupational disease. If it's not on the official list, well, you've got to prove your working conditions increased your risk of getting it. And here's the kicker. These benefits essentially replace your right to sue your employer for damages. It's your exclusive remedy unless you can prove your boss acted with gross negligence or intentional malice.
Now, the law grades workplace disabilities into 3 distinct categories. First, temporary total disability. This means you can't work and you lose income for up to 120 days, which can sometimes extend to 240 days for treatment. Second is permanent partial disability. This is when you suffer an irrevocable physical loss, like losing a finger, but you can still go out and get a job. Finally, there's permanent total disability. This means you are permanently incapacitated from performing any gainful occupation, and this is usually assessed if that maximum 240-day treatment period expires and you still aren't medically cleared.
Next up, Section 5, Seafarers, the Magna Carta.
So our maritime workers deal with uniquely hazardous and isolated environments, right? Because of that, the law has woven a highly specialized safety net for them under the 2010 POEA SEC and the new Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers. And it revolves around a very strict ticking clock, 120 to 240 days. If a seafarer gets injured, the company-designated physician has exactly 120 days to issue a final medical assessment. Need more treatment? It can be extended to 240 days. But if that doctor fails to issue a final assessment within that strict window, the seafarer's condition legally becomes a permanent total disability by operation of law. Boom. The clock runs out, the status changes.
But what happens if the company doctor says one thing and the seafarer completely disagrees? Well, Section 22 of the Magna Carta statutorily codifies a brilliant tiebreaker, the third doctor rule. Step 1. The company doctor makes their assessment. Step 2. The seafarer brings in their own personal physician who says, nope, I disagree. Step 3. To resolve the deadlock, both sides mutually agree on a third doctor from a DOH-accredited clinic. And whatever that third doctor decides, it is absolutely final and binding on everybody.
There is another massive game changer in the Magna Carta, Section 57, Execution of Judgment. Historically, if a seafarer won a monetary award at a labor tribunal, they'd get paid, but if the employer appealed and won years later, that money was usually long gone. To fix this and protect both sides, the law now says disputed awards must be deposited into an escrow account or secured by a restitution bond before they can be executed. It's a safety lock. It guarantees the funds aren't prematurely spent while the legal appeals play out.
Finally, let's look at Section 6, Mental Health at Work.
Social legislation is modernizing, you guys. Physical safety is no longer the only metric we care about. Under Labor Advisory Number 19 from 2023, the law explicitly directs employers to tackle the unseen struggles of the workforce. If an employee needs clinical psychiatric intervention, employers are now directed to offer flexible work arrangements, think telecommuting or modifying their hours. And even more powerfully, they are directed to provide paid leave benefits that are completely distinct and supplementary to your regular sick leaves. That is huge. Safety nets are now legally catching our psychological well-being, not just our physical bodies. And of course, with that level of care comes a need for strict privacy. Your employer shares the responsibility for helping you access care, like referring you to PhilHealth consultant providers, but they are legally bound by the Data Privacy Act. Absolutely no unauthorized disclosures of your mental health status are allowed, but they still have to be held accountable, right? So companies must submit an annual medical report to the DOL detailing exactly what mental health programs they're running and the number of cases they've handled. It's the perfect balance of accountability and total privacy.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. From the foundational 36 contributions of the SSS to those high-stakes 120-day assessments for seafarers, all the way to modern mental health accommodations, we are looking at a legal web that is constantly expanding and adapting, which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to think about. As the very definition of a safe workplace evolves from just physical safety to holistic psychological well-being, how much further will these statutory safety nets have to stretch to protect us against the unseen challenges of tomorrow? Thank you so much for joining me, and keep learning.